I'll just introduce you to the group so that let them know. Besides knowing you in LinkedIn and other places, and probably you
Sure.
can talk about yourself.
Yeah.
During the conversation, and we'll move forward with that. Yeah.
Sure. I just wanted, do we have the control to see the number of attendees here?
Yes. We have 98 of them have joined. In fact, actually, good to have 178 have registered. It happened just, like our members are very, I'm very much interested in learning forecasting and especially on the forecasting technique from you, Lalit. It's been a great pleasure having all of us with us. Let's make it as informative as possible. Yeah.
Sure. I would try my level best, and I would like to keep this session interactive if possible, in order for us to learn from each other. So thank you all, first of all, and then welcome to all of you on the GWFM forecasting session with me. And my name is Lalit Chouhan, as Shiva just mentioned, and you can call me Lalit. I have overall 17 plus years of workforce management experience, and I started my journey as an MIS executive and then moved to the real-time analyst. From real-time analyst till the last assignment which I had was a WFM director for one of the MNC company in Philippines, and I'm based out in Philippines right now. I'm taking sessions on various workforce management vertical topics since I would say 2011. So it has been great 9 years of journey where I have been helping out and I'm learning with these sessions. So I would with that note, I would request to let's start, and give me a note or pause me anywhere you see that if I'm going fast, or if you have any questions, either you can put it on a chat and we can take it. So after every 2 to 3 slides, we would be taking a pause in order to check if anyone has any question, so that I can help to answer those questions. Okay, so let me just quickly share my screen with that.
And we have a chat box here, and you can type here. All of you have access to chat here. You feel free to ask questions if you have anything. And also the another option is to raise your hand so that I can unmute you. You can shoot question to Lalit. With this, Lalit, let's go ahead.
Sure. I would just be requesting to get a confirmation if all my access and if the screen is working fine. So that way, I think we would be able to.
Yes.
Okay. Can everyone see the presentation as forecasting overview?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. Great. Fine. So let's talk about forecasting. Forecasting, as the word says, and as we are all, or some of us, I think, have done the forecasting in somewhere in our life, right? Forecasting is all about predictability. Which is called, in its layman term, is looking at the future or knowing the future even before the future happens in the present, right? So if I would go for the slide wise, or if I talk about from an industry standard, the definition for forecasting has been as that forecasting is an integral part of our planning and decision making activity, because every decision which we take is based on the planning, and the planning requires the forecasting. It requires a predictability that whether tomorrow it would rain or not, so that I can buy an umbrella, or I should get the umbrella with me tomorrow, whether that the market would open or not, so that I can do the shopping today itself. So basically, in order for us to do the planning at every level, whether that is at domestic level, whether that is at business level, we need some sort of forecasting. Forecasting is also the process, of predicting the future value, as I mentioned to you. And the future value lies in a variable which can change, which can be today, which can be tomorrow, which can be next week, which can be next year, or so on, right? Now, forecasting can be either for a demand, right, for a product or for a service, or for the price of a commodity. And this is just few examples which I have illustrated. Again, the purpose of the forecast is to predict the workload in terms of the number of calls which are expected and the time it will take to handle them. This is very specific to workforce management perspective for the contact centers. In our contact centers, we forecast the workload, and I'm sure some, most of you would be available that what do we call as in workload, when we look at that the number of transactions needs to be handled in particular set of time, and what would be the number of hours or the minutes which would be required in order to attain the specific SLA. So in order for us to predict the workload, we need to do the forecasting, and that is as an output, we would be coming out in the number of calls or the transactions, I would say, because nowadays we also do the forecasting for calls, for chat, for social media, for back office accounts. So then we need to know that how much time it would take to handle all of those transactions and serve to the client need. Next, classification of forecast. So a forecast can be classified either as a short term, as a medium term, or as a long term forecast. So as I mentioned to you that the time duration, which I'm saying is the short term, the medium term, and the long term, is a variability where we are looking for the forecast. Now, where do we use the short term forecast? So the short term forecast are made for the purpose of material control, loading and scheduling. In the workforce management, we generally roll out the schedules for 1 to 2 weeks ahead, and that is being given to a larger population which we have in our businesses. Let's say we have a 2000 FTE based or 2000 employee based contact center, and that's just supporting maybe one account. So we need to give them and let them know that for next 2 weeks what is going to be your shifts and what time you would be taking break. Now, how are we going to come to that decision that what is going to be your shift and how, what break you're going to take it and what time you need? That would be done on the basis of our call arrival pattern, right? How would we achieve to the call arrival pattern? The call arrival pattern would be achieved if we already have the daily forecasting numbers. And how would we get to the daily number of forecasts if we already have the forecast number with us? The second term is the medium term forecast, which are actually used for workload and headcount planning in contact center. Now, this is the term which is being used, or the medium term forecast is majorly being used by the middle level managers in order for them to plan these various cyclical events ahead. Okay. The last one is the long-term forecast, which are actually being used by the senior level in the organization for budgeting, for planning, for financial, and for investment planning, even for infrastructure planning also. Because the way we see it, the long-term forecast is the most critical element, and for that matter, even the short term and the medium term as well. However, the long-term forecast would have a different variables. What we would be looking at a holistic view for the organization, that how many seats I need, how many computers I need, how many mouse I need, how many speakers I would need, or how many headset I would need for my business. If we talk about further how many employees I would need for the hiring. So forecasting, consisting of long term, medium term, short term, basically tells the organization that the input which are coming from workforce management with the coordination of the data, as well as looking at the cyclical event and the the information which is coming from the client, helps us to plan better and then to execute even better. And if we see the anomalies or changes in our execution, then we can take a quick action by adjusting our short-term forecast. Any question anyone have so far here? Is the pace okay with all of you? I just wanted to check that.
Let me see if there are any hands rising. 1 minute. You can also look at the questions. Yes, there are questions. Okay, just saying hi, hello. Let me see if I can see any hands here.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I'm not able to see any question or chat. Maybe it is. Okay, fine. So since there are no questions so far, I would say that we are going well. Let's move on to the next topic then. So let's talk about the forecasting method, and this is one of my interesting topic, which I would say, because the more I know about it, the little I feel that I know little. Okay, until the last week, I got to know about more than 35 methods of forecasting. So I'm sure that we would not be able to cover all of that in this 1.5 hour of session. And I know that all of you are giving your weekend time to learn this. So we would cover the forecasting methods in terms of how we actually look at the forecast in major broad categories. Okay. So those three categories which you can see on the slide here on the screen, we talk about synthetic forecast, we talk about analytical forecast, and we're going to talk about the use of economic indicators, right? Now, let's look at what is synthetic forecast. So synthetic forecast is basically a forecast where you would be having more input coming from the behavior, which, as if I read the slide, you can say that it's based on the opinion survey, the most commonly used method of forecasting employed by industrial manufacturer. It is mainly used by company salesmen who are asked to submit the estimate of future sales in the respective area, right? I'm sure there would be drawback in this method. Reason being, it's only coming from the guesstimate method. This is part of a qualitative method, which we uses in the synthetic forecast, right? This could also be a group discussion. This could also be a poll, an opinion, which would have been taken, like, during the government surveys, we take the poll that which party is gonna win. So here, with respect to the same example of the salesman which we are using, what could be the drawback? And this could be the drawback, that the salesman temperament, either the salesman is too optimistic that yes, I am going to achieve the target and I'm gonna give you, so here is my forecast that I'm gonna get you the sales for 5 million, or too pessimistic that no, this is not possible, I don't even know how to get it, I'm new in the business and I do not really have any idea that what sales going to be. But the sales is not only dependent on the salesperson, it also depends on the buying power of the customer, so which has not been considered here. Natural instinct, because of the recent success or failure, as just I mentioned, lack of time to prepare the full estimate, right? Or lack of knowledge of companies' marketing strategies. Next is the analytical estimates, and this is being used a lot. You would see this day in, day out in the contact center industries mostly, or wherever you have a cyclical trend, a linear trend going on. You would see that wherever we have a volume coming or the transactions are flowing in a constant gap, which is either in a 15-minute of interval, in a 30-minute of interval, in a 1 hour of interval, or even every day. So let's read about it, and then I would talk about it more. Analytical estimates rely on the actual demand data of last few years, arranged in chronological order. So as it says that the analytical estimates rely on the actual demand data of the last few years arranged in a chronological order, that also tells us that we have to arrange the data in a chronological order, right? It's called time series. And why it is called time series? Because in a respective time manner, as I said, in a specific gap of the time, the volume would show certain behavior. The transaction would show certain behavior, and we would talk about that behavior, further. The method consists in determining the nature of existing trend and extrapolating the trend into the future. The principle underlying the method is that since past can always be taken as a guide for the future historical data, for last few periods can always provide an indication of future activity. And that's true. Forecasting is all about looking in the past and then taking a decision in the future, right? That we have already seen in the past slides as well. But how does the time series is different, and how it is being arranged into that, how time series actually takes forecasting, that we will see here. Time series actually required 5 components, what you can see here. First, trend. Second one, cyclical fluctuation, or we call it cyclicity also. The third one is seasonal fluctuation, which we call it seasonality index. And then the fourth one is a random fluctuation, which we call it outliers as well. Now, what is trend, right? So let's look at the trend. Basically, the trend is the overall growth. Either it can be declining, or it can be increasing, or it can be exponentially growing or exponentially decaying or decreasing. As you can see in the example illustrated in point A, that linear with consistent rate increasing of 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, 65, or linear with constant rate of decreasing like 40, 35, 30, 25, 20, 15, and so on. Exponential growth, of course, that's 40, 80, 160, and so on. Exponential degrowth, which is again 40, 20, 10, 5, and then 0, right? Cyclical fluctuation is basically the oscillation pattern of increased and decreased around the trend with the periodicity equal to the trade cycle. So the trade cycle is always greater than a year, and fluctuation caused due to the rise and fall of the business over the trade cycle are attributed as cyclical fluctuation. The another example of the cyclical fluctuation, I'll give it to you, which we all can correlate. Like in Philippines, whenever there is a match, or whenever there is a boxing happening, boxing event happening for Manny Pacquiao, I am sure you would see that cyclical event, and though it doesn't happen very regularly, but during that event, you would see some sort of change in the business. Like, people would, most people will go to restaurant to watch the match, right? That another thing which I talk about, the cyclical fluctuation with the greater example would be that during Christmas. During the Christmas time, we all see that the taxis are hard to find. And that is a cyclical fluctuation because it happens every year during November, December time. In India, cyclical fluctuation, if I say that, whenever we have a cricket match, during the cricket match, you would see that either the volume would either go up or go down. Okay. There is another example which we would talk about, cyclical fluctuation, which we can consider as a cyclical fluctuation, is our festival Diwali, right? Every Diwali is a cyclical event which happens every year around November, and we would see the change in the customer behavior in terms of their buying power, or maybe they are buying more during that time, right? The second thing is a seasonal fluctuation. The seasonal fluctuations are oscillation around the trend with the periodicity less than or equal to a year. Fluctuations caused due to the changes in season are attributed to the seasonal fluctuation. Seasonal fluctuation can also sometimes be referred or confused, with a cyclical event. But what we need to consider, or what we need to ensure, that cyclical fluctuation happens mostly at the same period of time. Okay. And within a year, or maybe, when you look at the 2 to 3 years of data, it happens year on year. Seasonal fluctuation happens either at a month on month level or at a quarter on quarter level. Okay. Random fluctuations, as we talked, the random fluctuations are also known as outlier, which are unexplained. We cannot just explain that why, yes, why it has happened. That is all we would be explaining as part of our root cause analysis. But before it happens, nobody would be even aware of it. The latest, greatest example of the most random fluctuation which has happened in the 20th century is the COVID. So no one, none of the forecaster, none of the astrologer, none of the scientists have even forecasted that we're gonna have this huge random fluctuation in our life. So as if I read the point 4, and I'm sure you're all reading with me and paying attention to this, that random fluctuations are unexplained chance variation which remains when other 3 component named trend, cyclicity, seasonality have been identified and removed from the original time series. Now, why it says that it needs to be removed from the original time series and needs to be identified? The forecasting is a process where what we get as an output of the transaction, right? But before, when we talk about our data has these 4 components. Our data has a trend, our data has a cyclicity, our data has a seasonality, and our data has outlier. So before we even identify the outlier, we have to identify our trend. Before we even identify our outlier, we have to identify what is the cyclicity in our data. And then we also have to identify what is the seasonality. Once we separate all these 3 into 3 separate tabs, maybe you can say that, or 3 separate files, or 3 separate spaces, right? Then you would be able to see that you have some random fluctuation. And now random fluctuation needs a treatment. Sometimes we need to add those random fluctuation as part of our cyclical or seasonal fluctuation, which means that it is not 100% sure that you would remove the complete impact of the outliers. You would give a treatment to your outlier either through the additive methods or through the transient methods. Or sometimes you would bring your partners, your operation partners, to discuss that how to actually play or how to actually adjust these fluctuations so that next time, these fluctuations percentage or the limit, I would say the upper control limit versus lower control limit goes down, and we get more accurate forecast, because ultimately the random fluctuation would actually differ from your forecast accuracy. So any questions so far on this? Okay, so
let me see if there are any hands raised.
Okay.
Hi friends, you can raise your hand if you have any questions. Here, there's a hand mark out here. Let me see if there are any questions. Okay, there are questions. Okay. When in case of forecasting manpower, there's a question by Srikanth. Not completely able to understand.
Okay.
Let me unmute Srikanth 1 minute.
Sure.
And there's a Udita has got a question with respect to WFM. What category will be unplanned leave of employee? First, let me unmute Srikanth.
Sure.
Hi, Srikanth.
Hello.
Hi, Srikanth.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, Srikanth. Very much.
Yeah, see, this is about the forecasting of manpower because currently what happens is we are the manufacturing organization. So what happens is we cannot predict the orders because we are a very niche industry. So we cannot predict orders may come in future or not because the industry is such. So how we will able to forecast the orders in the coming months or in the coming years? How we will able to predict that? Because again, our when the forecasting is happening, again our headcount cost is also a major factor taking into the account.
Okay, so
Lalit, Srikanth comes from manufacturing industry. He is the HR in a manufacturing company. He comes from that
So
background.
I'm representing a company called John Cockrell India, which is a 200 years old organization in the history. So it's a French company. We basically into turnkey projects for steel industries. So you know the current market of steel. So this has become a challenge now.
understood, Shrikant, and I will try my level best to answer your question. But let me understand your question once again. The question is that how do we predict the number of orders which we are going to get in the market, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what is the historical data? And I would have probably a little knowledge about the industry where you are in. But
Okay.
any industry, any industry we talk about forecasting, what we look at is the historical data what we have. Now, in your historical data, it would not be possible that we would only be looking at the orders because orders are the output which you would have gotten, right? But I'm
Yes.
sure there would be dependent variable for that order, and I'm just putting an example to help you, illustrate that. There could be possibility that the order depends in the market growth, or the buying power, as I was saying earlier, for some XYZ factors. Now, if it is a steel, I'm just thinking of thinking broad, just a loud idea. If we are talking about the steel, I'm sure it would also depend on the government policies. That's number one. Number two, it would also depends that how's my overall economy of the market, wherever we are trying to get these orders are doing, right? That's two. Number three,
Okay.
could be the possibility that how is the buying power of the company, because I think steel is something that we would be making. So how's the buying power of the raw material, in the market of the company is? That's three. The fourth one, it will also be dependent on the existing sales team you have, with their tenure and with their credibility in the sales record which they have shown. So just sharing a loud idea that if you have sales executives or sales managers who are in the industry from 25 years, and they have seen this trend or variation in their performances because of XYZ factors. So if we put it all together, I'm sure you would be able to get near to the prediction that where your sales going to lay out, and then that could be used as a test data to further adjust the forecast when you actually get into the real, or I would say the present day. And then you can actually compare that, okay, you used at that time maybe the rate of the raw material was X dollar, okay, or the X rupees, but now the raw material dollar is X plus 1 rupee, and that is the reason the sale has gone little down. Because if it would have been X minus 1 rupee, you would be able to buy more and you would be able to produce more, and if you would be able to produce more, you might have been able to sell more. So all of these factors would actually take into consideration. I hope I was able to answer the question.
Yeah. Thank you, Lalit. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay.
Thanks,
Should we take one more question, Shiva?
Sorry, Srikanth, you have another question?
On this, based on this forecasting, again, how you will able to predict the manpower forecasting? That is the second question.
Okay, great. So manpower forecasting or the prediction of the manpower is basically against the workload. Now, in order for us to predict the workload, what we have to see that for which location this manpower prediction is we gonna do. Are we going to do that for India? If we are going to do that for India, we have to consider the labor laws which are allowed. So example, what I'm saying, we are allowed to work in Philippines. I'm talking about. In India, I have to look at the numbers again. In Philippines, a labor law says that you cannot work or an employee should not be working more than 40 hours in a week. And in that 40 hours also, the employees are supposed to be given, 30 minutes of paid lunch break or break time, basically. So we have to look at first that what's my maximum capacity in one day for an individual employee. That's number one. Once I have that information, now I have to look at on the other side of the information is that what is my average handling time, for a sales. So if your sales managers are on field, let's say, and they start their operations by 9 a.m. and then they go to maybe, let's say, one customer, and I'm not sure whether that customer would be a distributor or what level, but I hope there would be some estimated time which you would be estimating that, okay, in order for you to go to one customer, and have a discussion about sale or presenting the product, right, and getting some buy-in from him and explaining about the product would take maybe around 1 hour, right? So, and in that 1 hour, so if every customer takes 1 hour and you have got 8 hours of working, I'm taking out the break and lunch and everything aside, 8 hours of working, just a broad idea that you would be able to meet 8 customers, right? So if you're able to meet 8 customers, which means that out of that, and if today I'm achieving, or I'm guessing that I would need to have at least 40 sales, okay, across, let's say, 5 people, or across among the five sales executive. So if one sales executive is meeting 8, right, and if even one sales executive is generate out of 8, if you're generating 5 sales, then in order for me to generate 40 sales, I need 8 sales executives. Now, how would I be able to go to the 40 sales number? Because that's something which I predicted and forecasted in my previous historical data, that historically I am getting every day 40 sales, right? So if I have to sustain to that performance, I have to have at least 8 people, and everyone would actually be generating 5 sales, and that's how I will have the 8 people. So that's how you would be able to generate the manpower requirement through your forecasting number of sales. And in order for you to forecast the sales, you have to look at the other factors. Does that help?
Yeah. But in India, it's 48 hours, 6 days a week, 8 hours per day, 48 hours
8 hours
as per
per
the
day.
law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So that includes 6 days actually. I was only
Yes.
considering 5 days in a week. That's why. But I'm sure you got the idea what
Yes.
how the
Yeah.
maths would work.
We already doing some time ticketing for the technical functions for how
Okay.
many hours is availability in a month, on a week or so. So based
Okay.
on that, we do work. But since the pandemic and force majeure clause in play, it becomes a difficult task, because some of the organization, some of the companies have put a force majeure clause, so that becomes a tough task.
I understand, Srikanth, and that is the reason I said that random fluctuations needs to be treated differently, right? This pandemic situation is an outlier, and we would see in future, or maybe in coming classes, that how actually we should treat on the fluctuation and consider our outliers or what we need to do with them. There are a couple of methods, in the stats where we can treat our fluctuation. COVID is something very different, but I'm sure some sort of data would actually help us, to improvise our forecasting accuracy. That's what I will say.
Thank you, Lalit.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Srikanth. If required, we can connect offline together. Thank you so
Yes.
much. Yeah. And we have a question, next question from Vidita from IBM. So she's asking a question with respect to WFM, what category will be unplanned leave of employees? Let me unmute her better if she can articulate.
Sure.
Udita, can you hear us?
Am I audible?
Yes,
Yep.
ma'am. Great. Go ahead.
Okay. So, for example, if I take Amazon Contact Center, so and there will be some unplanned leaves by the employees. So even if we are taking 8 hours, 6 days, so what category will be the unplanned leaves into seasonal, or it will be considered as random fluctuations?
Great question, I would say. And is the unplanned event, can the unplanned event be random fluctuation? The answer would be pretty much no. Why? Because unplanned event, or the unplanned leave, basically, not sorry, I'm sorry for the wrong choice of the word. Unplanned leave is part of the human behavior, right? We get sick, we have some emergencies coming in life, right? We need the unplanned leaves. So unplanned leave would be part of your seasonal event, but we have to understand, or we have to collect more data in order for us to look at those seasonal events. Now, how that seasonal event would actually, how can we actually look at further into those seasonal events? First, we look at our day on day pattern, that which day, historically for last 2 year, 2 to 3 year, which days are mostly, giving us the hit on the unplanned. Like in, I would say in most of the contact centers, either the unplanned leaves increases on Friday, or it increases on Monday, or it increases on the day where you have the highest volume coming in the office. Because, to the human behavior is that, whenever we have a higher load, we already know and we predict that, okay, sometimes you're not in a mood to take a call or answer the transaction. That is, so we have to find out that pattern. We have to further dig into our data and analyze that pattern, that where is my most unplanned leave coming from. If it is an equal distribution, right, let's say from Monday to Wednesday, Monday to Friday, or Monday to Saturday, you have equally 5% of unplanned happening, then it already become, I would say, a constant in your data, or a constant trend, and then you can treat that separately into your planning. But if you have find out the trend, if you already found the trend that it's going to happen on Monday, or it's going to happen on Friday, then you can treat that by increasing the unplanned leave percentage for that day, but it still keep the same percentage of the number for the whole week. So does that answer the question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So should we move on to the next slide?
Thanks, Vidita. So we have 2 more questions.
Okay, sure.
Sham is asking, can you repeat the last point which you mentioned, maybe the 5th point? That's one. And the next question is from Rabi. Sham will come back to you on this. I'll just unmute Rabi 1 minute.
Okay.
Yes, Rabi.
Thank you, sir. Hi, Lalit.
Hello, Ravi.
First of all, very interacting and very interesting point you are discussing. So really appreciate for your time. So
My honor.
my question would be: is there any minimum or maximum historical data sample we can consider for time series method to get a better forecasting output? And the similar thing, is there any kind of a minimum or maximum limit we can consider for short term, mid term, and long term forecast for a better output?
Sure, sure. So I would share I would answer this question from my experience, what I have learned and seen. For time series, what I have noticed, actually, what we have noticed, that we actually need minimum of 2 years of data, because once we have 2 years of data, then only we would be able to find out the cyclicity in our data, because November comes 2 times, January comes 2 times, and if we would not compare January to January, we would not be able to get to know that if there is any cyclicity in that data or not. The seasonality you would only be able to see when you would have the data again for the same time, because you need to look at the data quarter on quarter, right? Because there could be variation that first quarter, the allocation of the volume is maybe 20%, but in the last quarter, because it's a festive season for all the religion, for all the, for most of the countries we have, on the planet, your volume goes high, or depending on the nature of the businesses you are in, the volume goes down if there are so many leaves and all coming. So we actually need 2 years of data for the time series analysis per se. But for the long term, short term, and intraday forecasting or the intraday prediction, what we refer to as long term, or the which organization does do the planning, the most long term planning the organization do is the 5-year planning, which happens at a C level, C-suite level, which is all the CEOs, COOs, CFOs level. They do the 5-year planning. The businesses where I would say that where I have come into the role of, where I have seen in most of our businesses, especially for workforce management, we at least do, or we should at least do 18 months of planning from the current month. So because 18 months of planning actually consider your first full year and then the additional 6 more months. Now for short-term planning, we should actually look at for 90 days of the forecast, or 90 days from here, which is at least a quarter. And then for intraday, we can go for 13 weeks, which actually is 3 months again. But we break that into 13 weeks, and then we look at for, coming 4 weeks, how our performance going to be. So that's something, we plan or prefer for intraday, short-term, and long-term planning per se.
Thanks, Lalit.
You're welcome. Okay, I think in the interest of time, Shiva, I would request that we move to the next slides. I think what 11 is when we started the session. We still have time, right, until 12:30. Yeah, I'm just saying it in the Philippine time zone.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I think friends. So let's park the questions at the last, and we'll continue, so that we'll complete the part of the presentation, and then we can open up the question and answer. Hope that is fine with all of us. With this, let's go ahead, Lalit.
Thank you. So as we were talking about the forecasting method, we talked about the synthetic forecast, and we took an example of the salesman. We can also take other examples of the synthetic forecast, wherever you would see that not of a much data collation is being done, and the inputs are coming from 1 or 2 people. That's where we call it synthetic forecast. We also and this is part of our qualitative method, right? In our quantitative method, where we do the statistical forecasting, and we use the statistics as part of as basis of our numbers, there's a lot of logical explanation is being given on how did you arrive to that number, how did you arrive to this number. That's all part of our analytical estimate. And the most prominent analytical forecasting technique is a time series forecasting, but there are also methods also. There is ARIMA, there is regression, there is even now SARIMA, and there are in the time series also there are n number of forecasting methods. It's additive forecasting method, it's multiplicative forecasting methods, it's exponential forecasting method, it's double exponential forecasting method. So there are a lot of forecasting methods, and I'm sure we will see that in coming classes. And in this class, the expectation which I would set is that I'm touching upon on all the topics so that it opens the horizon for the learning, and it creates curiosity in all of us to see that what else is there in that. Forecasting has a huge learning. I mean, I would say that we can even take the 6 months of classes on this, and we can continue to evolve on it. Okay. And now coming the AI and machine learning into the picture, the artificial intelligence, machine learning, TensorFlow, and various different tools like R coming into the picture. Minitab was already there, SPSS was already there. This can be elaborated a lot. Okay. So these two methods we have touched upon. The third method which we're going to touch upon is the use of economic indicator. And I think, Shrikant, this would probably help you in your business for the sales thing. So use of economic indicator method, actually, so under this method, this is done using the economic indicator. Again, the economic indicators are personal income, agricultural income, income of the the GDP of the country, the growth level, registration of automobiles, construction of contracts, and the population index to forecast the requirement of consumer goods like toothpaste. So this is just a quick example which I could illustrate. So this is also one of the forecasting method which we do. Which one would actually apply and would give most accurate forecasting? That's something we all have to look at when we first forecast, and then when we do the forecasting through the test data, and then we look at our error rate. So we would look at that one as well in the coming classes. So these three forecast methods, as we spoke of, the synthetic forecast, which is also the guesstimate level, the analytical forecast, which is the most prominent one, and the economic indicators, which are for the broad level of forecasting. The most accurate or the most closer would be the analytical forecast, again, as I would say, especially for the contact center industry. And then for other industries, it works in a different way, which we can even further discuss offline. Okay, so I would move on to the next topic then with that. And the next topic is just to illustrate the process flow on how forecasting works. Whether it is economic indicator, whether it is synthetic forecast, or whether it is the time series, or I would say the analytical forecast. So for any forecasting method to be used, this is what we actually need. Simple. We have to first collect the data. We have to collect n number of data, as much as data we have, maximum possible. If you have 5 years of data, let's put up a 5-year data, and then maybe after that we would, looking at a business, looking at our industry, basis on that we can actually pick up the sample of that data from there, whether we just want to use 2-year or whether we want to use 3-year. That really depends on industry to industry, and that also depends on which industry we are serving. Even if we are from contact center industry, which industry we are serving. Okay, then the second step is to establish the trend. Look at the trend, whether the data is increasing, the volume is increasing day on day, week on week, month on month, year on year, or it is decreasing in the same fashion, or it has some random variation, like increasing then decreasing, then increasing then decreasing, right? And that's part of the seasonal, right? So do we have the seasonal component in our data? Yes. If we have it, we isolate our seasonal variation. Then we look at our trend. We look at our trend and we forecast our trend for the future period, and then we further forecast our trend for the and then we further forecast our seasonality for the future trend. This includes, so if you could see that if we have what we need to do, if we have the trend, if we have a seasonality, and if we have cyclicity, we have to forecast all three of them differently, right? And then we would be coming up with the final forecast number. So that's a very simple illustration I have put together. And then we can move on to the next slide. So the next topic, and here I'm changing the topic, which we're gonna talk about is the types of forecasting approaches, right? Now this is, we are talking in terms of our, closest way of analytical forecast, right? There are different approaches which we consider, and we talked about the time series analysis a little bit, we touched upon that, right? But there are other estimation approaches also, right? So once we have analyzed the data and the adjustment in the data has been made to the historical information, then our next step would be, is the process to process and translate the raw data into the prediction. Okay. Now there are these four approaches. What you're seeing is, it's not only limited to these. There are many approaches we have for forecasting. But I'm just illustrating the four for now, and then we would cover more in the coming classes. So as I read it, there are many different approaches used by the call center today, to predict the workload. The most commonly used approaches are point estimation, averaging approaches, regression analysis, and then time series analysis. Okay. Now, what is point estimation? So point estimation is the most simplest form, and let's look at to that. Point estimation is the most simplest form. What happens is that in the point estimation, that whatever the volume which was offered to me or to the center or to whatever the number of sales was generated yesterday, I am positively hoping, right, and considering that last data point as reference to the next forecast, which means that if I had 1,000 calls offered yesterday, I'm expecting today also there would be 1,000 calls which would be offered. Now, so if you read about the slide here, it says the same thing, that the simplest approach to predict what an element of data will be used, will be in future, is to simply use an equivalent point in the time and copy paste it basically. So this forecasting approach can be illustrated by thinking about another type of forecasting. Example, weather forecasting with point estimation approach. A prediction of high temperature like on August 15 coming this year would be derived by simply using the number of August 15 last year. Whatever temperature I'm going to have for August 15, the same temperature, I'm referring that last year August 15, the temperature was 40 degrees Celsius, or maybe 20 degrees Celsius. I'm anticipating the same gonna be this year as well. But in the contact center, scenario, point estimation is weak in many reasons. So the number one reason is that there is no guarantee, right, that the past information, is being used as predictor is valid in the first place. Because if I'm just looking at the last year, same day, same time, or even for yesterday volume information, I don't know that why yesterday there were 1,000 calls which came in, and I don't have any history beyond that because I'm not doing any reference to that, right? And it's not only for contact center. I would say it works even for most of the industry, that you cannot take decision just on the basis of last day or last year, same time, same day event. Sometimes it falls true, but most of the time it doesn't really align with your forecasting prediction. The data does not reflect any long-term changes that may be happening in the business. As we said, yesterday or the last year, the call which were there, maybe 1,000 calls were there last year on the same day. If we are expecting same call volume today, then we are maybe missing to various other data points. One of them is customer to contact ratio. There could be possibility that in 1 year the customer base would have increased, right? There could also be possibility that new product have been launched and the customer would be looking for a solution for that. There could also be possibility that new channel has been launched. Instead of calls, now there are chat as well. So might be the volume is routed through chat, and you might not gonna get the same call volume which are coming. So we have to consider those other elements and those other variables which, or the changes which has happened in the business. Also, it does not provide the fact that there may be an upward or downward in the trend, right? Whether the volume has increased or the volume has decreased. So pretty simple. Point estimation is also called naive forecast. If you would go for a if you would try to look for a point estimation forecasting technique, you can also refer to the naive forecasting, because in a naive forecasting, it's called NAIVE. A naive forecast method, is always referencing to the last data point and considering that last data point as our new forecast. And that is the reason we do not actually use the point estimation technique. Okay, but when we do not really have any other data, let's say your business just got opened yesterday, let's say you've opened a sweet shop or you have opened a bakery, and you yesterday sold 100 breads or maybe 100 kilo of sweets, then what would you expect today? That yes, at least I should be selling 100 more today. Or if yesterday you had 10 customers came in, positively you would hope that I should have at least 10, and if it's coming more, I think that would help. So point estimation can only be used when you don't really have any other historical data except to one point of data point which you're looking for. Okay, so that's about the point estimation. The second one is the averaging approach. Okay, now I'm sure most of you would be familiar with the averaging approach, but just for the sake of everyone's to be on the same, to bring everyone on the same level and to refresh my own knowledge, I would say let's talk about the averaging approach. So averaging approach actually includes the several data points, and are used, which are being used to predict the forecast or the future, right? This approach is better than better compared to the point estimation, because we are still using multiple information, multiple data points are being used. Three types of averaging approaches we talk about or we look at in our forecasting method. First one is a simple average, right? The second one is a moving average, and in the moving average we have pointers. So we have 3-point moving average, we have 5-point moving average, and we have 7-point moving average, and we would talk about that. And then the last one we have is a weighted moving average, which means that we provide the weight to the each element of the data to a certain level, and then we come up to the forecast. Okay, now so let's quickly look at the simple average. So the example of the simple average, as you would see, and I would just read through the slide, that this this averaging approach is to take a simple average of all the data. In this example, we will just gonna add all the volume which we see in the column E for year A, and we will divide that by the number of months of the data we are looking at. So as you can see, the sum of the volume from January until June is 719,000, or we can call it 7,19,000, and the total number of the month what we have is 6. So 7,19,000 divided by 6 is what will give you 119,883, 119,883, or 1,19,883. Now this could be your next forecast, right? And which would somewhat, I would say, that closely falling or closely aligned with your historical data. But what it does not say that whether it is following a trend or not, because if I look at January until June, you see the volume has some variation. March was 120,000, April 126, May 128, and then June went back to 120 again. So I think we need to look at that, how can we even forecast a little more accurately, and thus we use average sometimes but not all the time. The second one is a moving average, and moving average, while it is being used as a forecasting technique, let me clarify this. This is a very important point, that while moving average is being used as a forecasting technique, it is also being used to normalize our data. Mostly when I do the forecasting, I do not use the moving average as my final forecast, but I take help of the moving average to get to the final forecast, when I normalize during the normalization process. So, and we will talk about that in coming classes, that how to use moving average or how to normalize our data using the moving average. But here we are talking about that how the moving average can help us to predict the forecast. Okay, so a moving average is one method in which the old data is dropped out, as the old information will be deleted and the new information is added to the averaging approach. The larger the period of moving average, the greater the smoothing effect will be. The example of moving average, as you can see, that calculate 3 months moving average ignoring the decimal value, forecast the demand for month of Jan 2011. If the actual calls are offered, in the month Jan 2011 is 857, what shall be the forecast for Feb 2011? So basically in moving average, what we do, and you can see here, if I'm not sure if my mouse pointer is visible to everyone. Is it, Shiva, is it visible to everyone?
Yes, it's very much.
Okay, fine. No, I'm just referring to my mouse pointer. So basically, as you can see here, that we have in the first table on the left side, we have a volume which has been offered to us from January until December. In January, we have 410 calls. In Feb, we have 560. In March, we have 480. In April, we have 500, and so on. Now, what we do in the moving average is, and here you will be seeing the example in the second table, that we put our pointer on the March and we take an average of January, February, March by putting an average formula in the cell with respect to the March. And we will get the answer as 483. We drag that moving average formula. As I drag it from January to February, from March to April, it would leave the point or leave the data of January. 410 will not be part of the moving average anymore. It would be 560, 480, and 500, and thus I would get the answer 513. And then same, it would go for the next one, which is, for 540, it would consider the data for March, April, and May, and thus it would further drag. Now, with this technique, if you would see that it would actually normalize my volume and would leave the lowest data or the highest data point, because it is averaging it, right? So that is how the moving average works. And likewise, we will be able to get, the moment I will drag it beyond December, I will be able to get the volume forecast for January 2012. So any questions so far? Okay, so I take that as no and I move on. So as we were talking, and as I said, that moving average is a normalization method also, but some people, or I would say some forecasters, are using the moving average as a final forecasting method, and there is nothing wrong in it. There is nothing wrong in forecasting. I mean, you can forecast the way you want, but in order for us to provide a more accurate forecast, it is better to use the statistical forecasting techniques, which are a proven method, by our mathematician and so on, by other scientists. So we have some limitations in moving average, and of course there will be, because here we are giving an equal weight, to each of the data point. where it is reasonable, to assume that the most recent data is the most relevant to the current condition. The forecast would tend to lag behind the trend because we are not considering any trend here. What we are just doing is that we are giving equal weight and we are normalizing the data, and we are coming up to the point that this would be my final forecast. So as the number of periods average increased, the quantity of the data stored in the mention would also increase. And as the numbers, as the quantity would increase, your forecast accuracy might go down. So that these are the limitation we have for the moving average. And thus, instead of moving average, we go for weighted moving average. So here we have the weighted moving average. Now for the weighted moving average, which you can see here, that this is the another averaging approach which would be used to account for the fact that some data may be more reliable as a predictor than other data. The best example of this I would give it before even we talk about the slide and get into this. When we look at the 13 weeks of forecasting, and some of you who are using IEX or Variant or Teleopti or any other tool, most of those tools will ask you that, okay, if you want to run the forecast, what is the weight you want to give to your historical data? Okay, and we always give, or most of the time it is true in the nature that my most recent history would be the more accurate forecast for the coming future. Now how does it work? And if I take you back to the example, just putting an example on the workout, on the exercise. So yesterday or day before yesterday, if I was able to run for 5 kilometers, right, I can easily forecast that since yesterday I was able to run for 5 kilometers, today I should be able to run for 5 kilometers. I should not have any challenge to that, right? Because, so what am I doing? I am giving the highest weight to my yesterday's performance, in order for me to predict my to predict my calorie consumption today. Now, how would I be able to predict my calorie consumption? Because I have already estimated that I will run for 5 kilometers today also, as I was able to run yesterday 5 kilometers. So I will be burning certain calories, right? And since I will be burning certain calories, I can stick to some certain calories consumption for today for my macros and micros, or for my carbs or my protein or whatsoever. So in the same way, we use the weighted moving average in our contact centers also to generate the forecast in order for us to calculate our manpower requirement. Mostly this happens in a weekly level, but we also distribute or give weight to our yearly events if we don't have, or if we do not really understand that how we need to actually distribute the data. The another example for weighted moving average works on average handling time a lot. When we do the AHT forecasting, let me repeat this. When we do the AHT forecasting, we do not use the time series for that. We use weighted moving average or weighted average, for AHT forecasting. So now let's look at the slide. That in the approach, as you can see, that the volume from January until December has been given to us, which is the number of calls which are offered, and there is a weight. So for January, we are giving a weight of 0%. For February, the weight is another 0%. For March, it's 4%. For April, it's 5%. And so on. For December, it's 28% of the forecast. Now, what is the weight which I am considering, for January? So in order for us to calculate the weight, the simple formula would be that you would take the number of calls which are offered and you would multiply with the given weight. Now, who would decide this weight and how this weight would have been given? That's really the art, I would say. And that's where the human intervention comes into picture. And that is the reason here I say that you need to study your business before you decide on what weight you're gonna give. Okay, so you give a 0%, you have given a 0% weight. So of course, when you multiply 0% with 410, the answer would be 0. When you would multiply 4% with 480 for the month of March, the answer would be 19, and so on. When you would multiply 28% to 950, the answer would be 266. And when you would sum it up all, the answer you would get is 798, and that could be your new forecast for the coming period, which could be January 2011 or 12 or whatever. So in the last line, as you can see, that the call forecasting in many of the automated WFM system use this method of call forecast coupled with seasonality and special days. In IEX, we have a special day distribution, right? And we would discuss that, when we would discuss about the forecasting through IEX or forecasting through variant. But I've just mentioned here about IEX because that's where my most of the confidence is. So any questions so far on any of the average technique?
So we have one question from Ruchit.
Okay.
I'll just unmute Ruchit. Sham, probably we can connect later on repeating the last point that we wanted to ask. We'll answer all the questions of folks who are asking question here. Hi, Ruchit.
Hello.
Hi, Ruchit.
Yes, Ruchit.
Okay. Hi, Sham. Hi, Shiva. Actually, I had one question to ask you.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I just wanted to confirm, I was in one of the interviews. Actually, I recollected right now. I was asked the question when I appeared for the RTA interview long time back. The question was that, say, for example, if I do not have any kind of historical data with me, to forecast or to use as a forecast, then how will I, forecast for the new setup or for the new project which I'm going to build later on? So it's altogether a pilot team, for example, and there is no historical trend available with me. Then how am I going to build that particular forecast trend, for the future reference or for the future new projects?
Sure, Ruchit. Let me help you, to answer. And I would like to rephrase your question and so that you can help me if I'm getting it correctly. So the question was that there is no historical data available. It's a new business, right? How are we going to forecast for the future predictability or for the future? Is that right?
Yes, correct. So it's a new setup, a new pilot team, and then how you're going to, forecast for that.
Okay. If you do not have any historical data available, and as I said, I think we can take the sweet, shop example or a bakery example for that. Okay. If we do not have any historical data available, what do? We look at the reference, and the reference would be that for the same set of industry, okay, if there are other players in that industry, what is going to be or what has generally been their performance. I would just extrapolate my numbers on basis of their experiences or their historical performance, and this is called reference forecasting as well. So I'm referring to their performance. I will give you an example. I mean, let's talk about any airlines which has recently been launched. I am not sure if I know anyone, but let's give an example. Let's take an example. Let's say the American Airlines, if they are coming up with another airline company, they would look at probably the Delta, or anyone else. Same thing goes for maybe Indigo to Vistara. So if we do not have any data points available, and if the business is fairly new, you would refer to that business or to the same player's performance in that industry. That is one. The second thing would be that before even launching the business, you can roll out a survey, right? The poll. During the poll, the survey results which you get let's say you're going to open a new business, and then before even you open a business, you went on you went on a survey, or you rolled up a survey, and your survey would actually tell you that what is going to be the number of sales you're going to make, or number of customers you're going to get, and things like that. I think one of the newspaper in India does that very much, and the name is Dainik Bhaskar. Does that help you? Or there could be other approaches as well. The third approach is the focus group discussion. In the focus group discussion, what happens is that players or the experienced folks from the same industry, which has worked for the other key players, would actually discuss, or would generate or would lay out the forecasting numbers basis on their experience or they have seen. So these three things can help when there is nothing else available.
Yeah, okay. I think that actually helps. Yeah, correct. So we can provide the relative reference of a different business.
Of a different, I would say the different company, but from the same industry. So if the business was from airline, you would look at the airline data. If the business is for let's say healthcare, you would look at for other healthcare companies. If the business is for insurance, you would look at for other insurance companies. So but in the same industry, I would say that do not go far off that the business is from technology, and we are looking at into the insurance. So that is going to be a cross referencing actually.
Okay, valid. Yeah, correct. Okay.
Thank you, Sachit.
Yeah.
Okay, so just a time check on this, and we have 10 more minutes to go. And if you would look at, I have roughly around half of the slides to go. We have a bigger topic to talk about, which is again time series, as we would go back, as we talked about earlier on the forecasting approaches. And in the forecasting approaches, we talked about 4 forecasting approaches, which is, okay, can you guys see the slides which I have?
Yes.
Okay, so we talked about the point estimation, we talked about the averaging approach, and we're going to talk about the time series, and then we're going to talk about the the regression later on. So moving on to the time series then. So here, specifically to the time series relation, this is the most accurate for call center forecasting, because it involves the process called time series analysis. The approach takes historical information and allow the isolation of effect on trend, the rate of change, as well as the seasonal or the monthly differences. It is the approach which has been used in most of the call centers and serves as the basis for most of the automated workforce management forecasting model. The basic assumption in this is that the call volume is influenced by the variety of factors over time, and that each of the factor can be isolated and used to predict the future. The method is used to handle complex and demand pattern by breaking down or decomposition method, which we also use, through the demand pattern. Into it, it also constitute the trend, the seasonal fluctuation, the seasonality, the cyclicity, as I said, the cyclical fluctuation, and the outliers, which are random fluctuation. So the method basically separate out each of the constituents and quantify each constituent and prepare the forecast by combining the 3 elements named trend, seasonality, and cyclicity. So you see that we took, or we considered 4 element of the data, which is trend, seasonality, cyclicity, and outlier. But when we actually generated the forecast, we are only considering now the trend, the seasonality, and the cyclicity. So let's talk about that trend analysis. And then I have an Excel prepared for this session, where I would show it to you that how you can actually do it, through the Excel, it would be very easy. So we'll quickly look at that. So the trend analysis, the first step in the time series analysis is to isolate the effect of the trend in the data. The trend or the rate of change can either be upward, downward, exponentially increasing, exponentially decreasing. Generally, in most of the call center, the trend rate is always positive, and that signifies the growth, because what we all positively, as a human, think that our business, would always grow, and that is what we should hope for. So the same example has been considered here, that my business from year A to year B, and even within year A, has growing, month on month and year on year, right? So the ideal approach is to identify the trend rate, is to capture the last 24 months of call volume, and which you can see in the table. We have 24 months of call volume data, year A and then year B. Each month of the year should be compared to the same month in the previous year in order for us to determine the annual rate of change. If I want to compare that last year January 2019 versus this year January 2020, or I would take an example of 2018 and 2019. So 2018 January, versus 2019 January, how much growth, or how many percentage of growth, or how many volume has been grown, in order for us to know that, we calculate the rate of the change. The rate of the change formula is very easy, which is monthly volume B minus monthly volume A divided by monthly volume A, where the B actually is the most recent 12 months and the A is the past 12 to 24 months, right? So as you can see in the example which are being understated. So in this example, you can see that the January 132,000 for year B is being subtracted by 113,000 for year A, and then further being divided by year A. And the answer what we would get, yeah.
Lalit, we can't see the sheet. We are seeing the weighted moving average slide.
Oh, okay.
Are you showing the Excel sheet?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I thought that's the reason I was actually looking for a confirmation. Okay. Can you all see now?
Not yet. It just click on escape. Now, yes. You're talking about this trend analysis slide, right?
That is correct. That is correct. I was talking about the trend analysis.
Can see that.
And I'm sorry, I will quickly take it. Yeah, so we finished the weighted moving average, and then we talked about the time series, I think, and I'm sorry if the slide was not being shown. And in the time series, we are talking about the first element, or the first step, which is the trend analysis. So in the trend analysis, I'll repeat this one, that in the trend analysis, what we actually look at, and you can see in this example, in the data which I'm showing here, is for last 12 to 24 months of data. And I'm considering already in this example that my volume is actually growing, because that is signifying the growth. So in order for me to do the forecasting, I have to do the trend analysis first. And in order for me to do the trend analysis, we have to look at the rate of the change year on year. In order for us to look at the rate of the change year on year, the formula which we have to use, or we have to, because we can already see that my year A, January, is 113,000 calls, 1,13,000. And the year B is 132,000, which is 1,32,000. Volume has grown. It's very identical. Everyone can see that. But how do we gonna generate a forecast using that? So in order for us to generate the forecast using that, we need to calculate the rate of the change. The rate of the change is that from year A to year B, there is an increase of 16% in the volume, 16.81 to be precise. In order for us to come up to the 16.81, we have to use a formula. The formula, which is very simple, is that you have to subtract year B from year A, and then you have to further divide the year A, because the base of my increase is still my year A. So I am generating the 16.81% rate of change from the year A, right? Or in other words, I can say that the call volume grew 16.8% from January to the following January, year on year, right? The same calculation would be performed for the remaining year, and we would be able to see the rate of change for the whole year for all 12 months. And once the calculation is complete, then we can calculate the annual trend, based on the following calculation. So I hope that this is so far easy, and we don't really had you guys are, you don't have any question on this one. So I would move quickly on the next, then which is the further step. So in the trend, as you can see, that the next step, which would be that we would be doing a summation of all the data, okay, for months of year B minus the summation of all the data or all the volume of year A, and then divided by the sum of year A. Same calculation what we did for 1 month, this time we are doing it for the whole year. And when we do that, what we actually get, that we have an annual growth of 18.51% from year A to year B. Okay, so now let's take a note that all these forecasting applications will not be looking it into the whole year of the future, but rather a few months ahead. Okay, so but it is useful, it is very useful to calculate an average monthly trend. Okay, now in order for us to calculate the average monthly trend, what we have to do is that we have to divide our annual growth rate into 12 months, so that I can see that what is my month on month change of the yearly trend. Okay, and for that, let me bring you to the Microsoft Excel so that you will be able to understand it better, and then we will come back here on the slide. Okay, so let me know once you can see the Microsoft Excel. Okay, can everyone see the Microsoft Excel here?
Yes, Lalit. Yes.
Okay, great. So the same thing what you were seeing in the example in illustration in the slide, I have put up a data here from January until December, and I have the year A volume here, and you can see the sum as I do the F2. You can see the volume here, which is sum of B2 to B13. Then we have year B, which is sum of January until December. And we calculated the rate of change, which I'm calling it a percentage of change. And the formula is very simple. If I just do, in order to show you the formula, I'm just, I just use the function so that you can see that how the formula is being calculated. So it's year B minus year A divided by year A. Okay. And then for the whole year, the same formula, I have dragged it here, right? This till here, this is the rate of change month on month, but this one, the 18.51 here, the yellow highlighted, is the rate of change year on year. Now, since I have a growth, I have used the same number, and I will highlight it again yellow. I have used the same number, the rate of change for the whole year to generate my average monthly trend. If I have 18 months of 18.5% of growth year on year, if I further divide that by 12, I can easily get that. I can easily say that on an average, month on month, I had 1.5% of increment in my volume, and that's a fair statement, right? Based on the mathematical calculation. So that you can see here. Now, I will take you to this power factor and detrending another, but in order for me to explain this, let me take you back on the slide so that we cover the theoretical part and then we come back to the practical part again. Okay, so going back to the seasonality analysis. Okay, so there are two main components that drive the future monthly forecast trend, future monthly forecast, which is trend and seasonality. So once we have already identified the trend, we know what is my rate of change month on month. I know what is my rate of change year on year, and I also know what is the average monthly trend I have. Okay, so the next step in the time series is to identify the seasonal pattern, which is represented by each month of the year. Okay, but and I would request you all to pay attention, because this is fairly tricky, because we cannot, just one month cannot really determine the monthly or the seasonal factor, just by looking at the most recent 12 months data. So in the example, what we have seen, that last 12 months of call data, where the solid, the black line which you saw was representing, sorry, yep, uh, not the actual call volume from month on month. So the next step in the time series process is to identify the seasonal pattern represented by each month of the year. And this is, I think, been copy pasted. So if you look at, and I would go back here on the seasonality analysis, this is the same trend which I have put together from my year to data. Okay, and I would go back to you and will show it in the chart as well. You would see that here in the seasonality analysis, that look at the monthly pattern, which may look obvious, but consider the December volume, could be higher than November's volume, due to the fact that the December may be indeed a busier month of the year, and so on. What we are seeing here, this white line, is my volume arrival, right? But the black line, what you see, is my trending line. While the volume is going down in the month of July, right? But the trend line is not actually, the trend is a linear trend, straight line, and it is referring that I have a straight volume going up from January until December, and I think that is what I'm trying to explain. So in the seasonality analysis, we would look at that once we have the trend rate, which we have already determined, the next step would be that the time series analysis, in the time series analysis process, is to isolate the effect of the trend. When we isolate the effect of the trend, we called it detrended volume, or we also call it normalization, right? So that we can remove the factor which will make the seasonal factor more apparent. Okay, so to determine the effect of the seasonality, it is important to detrend the most recent 12 months of data, and by other words, bring each month up to the current level by factoring in the month by month trend rate. So after we detrend, our data, we can do the apple to apple comparison easily, and the month of the year can be compared against the one another to determine what actually the busier than the average or slower than the average. So if I'll show that to you, I'll go back here. As you can see, and let me put up a graph here. This is how my first year of data is. If I put a trend line to that further, series option, and I'm looking for a trend line. Give me a minute. I'm not using the the newer version of the Excel. I'm using the old one, so give me a minute here. Select data and change series type. Okay. Okay. Well, I'm not able to find where would I get the. Okay. Anyways, I'll show it to you. I do not have the option here on the trend line for for this Excel, but I will just illustrate that. So I would be getting a trend line here, which would look something like this, because as you can see that, and this is a linear trend line which I am talking about. There can be we can have a multiple trend line in the Excel, which can also have a polynomial, which can also have a diagonal line, polynomial basically, and we can do the little bit of forecasting in Excel also. Excel comes with the idea, and which helps us to know that what is going to be my 2-level next forecasting, and we will see that in the coming session. I'll prepare that for you. So here, this is my year 1, and if I change it to year 2, you see my volume has changing. So as you can see, if I would go here and if I change this, you can see that my volume is increasing, because we are seeing that there is an 18% of increased trend. But in order for us to figure out that what is the seasonal event here, it says, it looks like my July is always dipping down, my May month is always going high, and my December has the highest volume. This actually relate or say that you have some cyclical event or some seasonal event happening. If I include another data series, which is in my data for one more year, which is here, so that's my year 1, and I make it year 2, you can easily say that yes, there is some cyclical event which are happening, because the volume is almost floating in a same way or distributed in a same way as is being used for first year and the second year. Now, in order for us to actually identify the seasonal event, for us to calculate the forecast, we have to look at and we have to detrend our volume. How are we going to detrend the volume? And I'm going to show that here. You can see here that I have given a weight or a power factor, to each of my month. What I have done here is that to the most recent data, which is the December year 2 or year B, is my most recent data, right? I do not want to give any weight to this number, or I do not want to give any power to this one. So you can see the formula which I have used here is that the formula, which is year B, which is C13, multiplied by the percentage of the 1 plus F2, and the F2 is my average monthly trend, which means that I'm extrapolating my 182,000 with the average monthly trend what I have, with the weight, with the further weight of this power factor. Okay, so you can use the formula as a power factor, as this one, which would actually give a power, or it would actually extrapolate the number. I have further given the highest weight, you can see, to the most previous data. So this would continue till the last 11 months, because my most recent data is what I'm considering would be the most accurate forecast. Now, as you can see that since I have removed or detrended my volume, because I've removed the seasonal impact, so this becomes my detrended call volume. And you can see the calculation here that how I would be detrending, my volume. So basically what I have done is I've removed the outlier segment or anything extrapolated which actually, gave us the growth factor of 1.5% month on month. With that, if I would further generate my average monthly volume, I would just simply gonna take this number or the detrended call volume. Are you guys so far with me till here?
Yes, Lalit, I think most of them are still with us.
Okay, fine. So since
Can you
I
pause
have
here and
already,
ask few questions? I know.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Sure. Now, if you look at, if I generate a chart on this data, you would be able to see that my volume is still has the same way, but the rate of the volume has further decreased. In order for me, since I have the detrended call volume using the using the power factor, I would be then generating my normalized volume, which is my average volume. Okay. And what I will do for average volume is simply I will create a straight line. And this is how the straight line would be, right? Now, this straight line, which I have put together, or which you can see here, the average method, which actually has removed any seasonal factor what I had in my data. And for that, you can see here that when I look at or compare that what is or how much seasonally the month were actually impacted, you can see that here. So what I have done till here, and I would want to explain that quickly, that I've used the historical data, I've calculated the rate of the change, then I've calculated the yearly growth, then I further calculated the average monthly trend or the rate of change a month on month, at an average level. Then I calculated my detrended volume, because what I did is that because in order for me to identify the seasonal event, I had to detrend my volume, and then I calculated an average volume using the entire year's detrending volume, and then I have calculated my seasonal factor. So you can see that generally the January month has 0.95%, or I would say 0.5% of seasonal factor. February has got 9% of seasonal factor. March has got 2% of seasonal factor. April has got probably no very relative or very minute seasonal factor, right? So now let's go back to the slide and look at again. So here on the seasonal explanation, and I would just read the slide again for you, that each month of the year has been brought up to the current level by factoring the effect of the trend rate or the growth. So in the example, what we saw that December has the most current month rate, and thus therefore does not need to have any trend factored into it. To equate the number with December in terms of the trend rate, November call volume would be increased by 1 month growth rate of the December. What we actually got was 1.5%. The same detrending adjustment would apply to each month's call volume. So From December to November, it is 1.5%. From December to October, it would be 1.5% multiplied by 2. Then from December to October, it would be 1.5% further to the power of 3. Okay, so that way we would be able to detrend. So the same detrending adjustment would apply for the each month of the call volume, and as we saw that the October call volume was 170,000, which was multiplied twice by 1.05, what we saw here as our average monthly trend. So this is what the slide is referring to, and the power you can see for the month of October, which we have used as the 3. Then so this process equalize the month of the year with respect to the trend rate or the opportunity for the business growth, and any difference that exists among monthly call volume after the detrending process can be attributed to the seasonal business factor. So the next step in the seasonality analysis is to calculate the seasonal factor for each month, and that compares to an average month of the year volume. Therefore, the average for the detrended months is called and illustrated in the 8th column, which we have seen there in the below mentioned table, and which we're gonna see here. So what you just saw in the Excel, and we covered till the seasonality factor, I'm gonna cover the slide here, and then we can go back to the forecast there. So the January's call volume of 156,202, which is being referred to the detrended volume, okay, is less than the average January volume, which is 164,768, this one. So the January seasonal factor can be calculated by dividing the 156,202, 156,202 with 164,768, and which would result into the factor of 0.948, which we saw here as I showed this one. So since I already have my average monthly volume for the whole year with this detrended volume, which I actually achieved by multiplicating the impact of the year B of the recent volume in order for me to come up to this average volume. So what we have seen that my seasonal factor is this percentage, and then I would read on again. So once the trend rate and the seasonal factor have been calculated, so now we have trend, we also have the seasonal factor, right? These numbers can be used to reliably predict future monthly call volume. The number in the next table illustrate the prediction for both February and October. Both the forecast starts with an average of 164,768 calls, average of detrended volume. Since it is the average of these months, it is also a generic month with respect to the seasonality. So the starting point will be the average of detrended volume, which is 164,768. This one, the monthly growth or the trend rate is applied twice in the month of February and 10 times in October. The way we decreased or the way we detrended our volume, when we would generate the forecast, we are gonna follow the other way or the different way in order for us to identify or to include the growth in our volume. So if I go back here, and you can see that my year on year I had a growth of 18%, right? So this clearly says that since my volume was growing from year A to year B, of course the year C volume should also grow, because that is what the data is showing. When I looked at the year on year growth, it was 18%. When I looked at the average monthly trend or average monthly rate or the change month on month was 1.524, 1.542%. which I can decrease to make it 1.54%. When I detrended the volume by using a technique of the power, by further extrapolating the month-on-month impact, and then through that I calculated my average volume, right? And then I calculated the seasonal factor or the seasonal changes has happened in the volume month on month. So now I'm going to apply the growth factor because my growth is happening in a specific trend. Year month 1, month 2, month 3, month 4, and up to 12. My starting point of the data would still remain my same average monthly volume which we have generated after the detrending process. So my year C forecast would be little tricky, and I need you to pay attention to this one. My year C forecast would be that my average monthly volume, okay, multiplication with the multiplication of my power factor, which you can see in the with the multiplication of the monthly trended volume, because I have 1.5% rate, average rate of change month on month, right? Then I have, since I'm forecasting the first month of the year, I would be considering the growth factor as the first month, and then you can see the multiplication of J2, which is my seasonal factor, right? So which means what all I am using, and if I just put that into the formula for precedent index, you can see this here, that I am taking these four blue dots into consideration, right? How am I generating the new forecast is basically, which is based on my average monthly volume, okay, which is my detrended average monthly volume, or basically the purest volume I have, okay. I am extrapolating that with the rate of change I have in my volume month on month historically, okay. Then I am applying the growth factor onto that, because I have a growth. This is the first month, and I have a linear growth month on month. So I'm applying the growth factor, and then over and above to that, I am applying the seasonal factor to it. And the seasonal factor what I have is 0.95%. So if I decrease this, if I do not increase this, this would even increase my volume more, as you can see. But since I only have to have the 0.95% of seasonal factor from my base volume, this is how your forecast would generate. And then this would continue month on month, and we would be coming up with the last forecast of December in this way, as you can see. So this is how. So why the way I'm showing the December is that your rate of average monthly trend, which is the difference of month over month, does not change, and this is still average, okay. So it doesn't change, but what changes here is your seasonal factor. What does not change is your average volume. So your average volume, your average monthly trend is not changing, but two things which are changing, which is the seasonal factor and the growth rate, because the growth in the month of December is 12 times higher, or I would say 12 points higher, not times, 12 points higher than the January. And that is how, using the the basic, I would say this is not 100% time series, I would say, but this is using the basic time series or the basic trend analysis series, you would be able to generate the forecast. Here in this method, we have used the weighted method as well as the average method. So I would go back and we can read the slide, and then we can move on, and and I would like to answer the questions if you guys would have. So once the monthly forecasts are derived out, the next step is to break the forecast into the day of the week and the day of the week and the time of the day. Okay, I would go till here. We actually covered the seasonality, and here it talks about the further topic, that since you have already generated the monthly forecast, then you can further break this forecast into the week of the month factor or the day of the week factor. Once the trend and the seasonality analysis have been applied to arrive at monthly forecast, the next step would be to break down the prediction into daily forecast to arrive at this number. And it is critical to look at the pattern within the month to determine if all weeks of the months are similar or we have some variations in the weekly pattern. Okay. To calculate the day of the week pattern, it is important to gather several weeks of clear representation data, and we would look at the weekly distribution and the daily distribution of our data, and that should be free of any holiday pattern or data aberration which could impact your forecast because of your random fluctuation, because if holidays are considered as random fluctuation when it comes to the trend. Okay, so the data should also be representative of the forecast period, and then from weekly sample, the average daily totals for each day or the weeks can be calculated, and then compared to the average weekly total, we can further go on. So any questions so far till here? Or was it too heavy?
Lalit, there are a lot of questions out here.
Okay, great.
So Darshan D is asking, what is the purpose of detrade the call volume?
What is the purpose of detrending the call volume?
Yes.
Okay. Since you have the year A and year B call volume as a base numbers, right? The purpose of detrending call volume is to arrive at the average monthly volume which are free from any seasonal factor. That is the main purpose for us to generate the average volume which does not have any seasonal factor or any seasonal impact in the volume.
Let me unmute. Do we have some time now, or is it too late for you, Lalit?
No, I am okay. I am okay. If everyone is there, I am okay to extend this session.
Yes. Still, there are 80 to 90 people.
Great.
Still listening.
Then
wonderful.
I see
Wonderful.
that a lot of people are. So I mean, I should not be that much selfish, to let the 80 people interest die. So I am okay. We can extend this. No problem.
Okay,
This is one of
I'll
Manila.
unmute Darshan.
Okay.
Darshan can ask further question. 1 minute.
Please. And we can take all the questions. No problem.
Yeah, hi Lalit, Darshan here.
Hi Darshan.
Yeah, I got it actually. Thanks for the point and thanks for the session.
You're welcome.
So is it necessary in the forecast like retrending the volume? So we always seeing in the growing part, like we can't expect every year we are getting the higher volume. It is showing that for the year C, it is increasing. We
That
can't
is right.
expect we can't expect the higher volume for the next year, right?
That is correct. That could be
maybe or may not be. That is maybe or may not be condition.
Agree. I agree with you. This is the maybe condition I've used in this example to actually illustrate or to to explain that when we will go for a full-blown time series forecast, okay, we still go for a detrending volume, but there we will be using a different technique to detrend the volume. And basically detrending means normalization of the volume. You have to uncover the normalized volume before you go for the forecasting, because if we do not have the normalized volume, you will not be able to extrapolate the seasonal factor. Now, since you have asked this question, I would take you back in the Excel again, and we can do a little bit of further exercise on this
Because
one.
as the forecast volume increases, we need to increase the headcount also, because headcount matters with this forecast volume. That's why I'm just checking with you.
No issues, no issues. And I think you are right. You're 100% right. So you can see here
Because it is
that
cost to the company, right?
that is a cost to the company, right? That's correct. I would not get into the manpower requirement right now, because in order for me to get to the manpower requirement, I might need to come up with the AHT also here, and then we might have to calculate the workload and the shrinkage and then further so on.
Yes,
So I would
everything
not,
includes, yes.
right. But this clearly shows in our historical data that whatever number of people I need, if I have a constant AHT, if the AHT target doesn't change, whatever number of people I need in year A, I will need more people on year B, right? Because that's a growth which I'm seeing.
Yes,
That is right.
absolutely.
So which means that if I put together these two numbers, and I will just put here, sorry, I'll just put copy paste here. Can you see my Excel, by the way?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So this is my year A and this is my year
Yes.
B. And I do not want to confuse, but stay with me here. Okay.
Okay.
This is year A, year 1, and then this is 3. And I put a simple formula which is called trend. Okay. In order for me to know my third forecast. Okay, sorry, I just interchanged the number. My X is my Y. 1 minute. Here. So you can see that, of course, my year-on-year volume is increasing and it should increase, correct? Because
Yes.
my year 1 data, if I put a data label on this one, so my year 1 volume is 154, my year 2 is 182. There is no reason for me to say that I will not have the highest volume than year 2, unless I know the reasons, right? Unless I know that
Yes.
I have a business insider information that, okay, no, next year, our half of the business is going to go to the another vendor and all of those stuff. And if that happens,
Yes.
then we will go for some other assumption that 20%, 25% of decrease and all. Okay. So I'm not going to talk about that. What I'm going to talk about here, that why do we need to detrend and why it is important to uncover the base volume? Because in this year A, if I do the average and take the average here, it comes out to be 128,333. And then if I take a
Yes.
year average, this comes out to be 152,000 and something, right? And then if I further
Yes.
calculate the rate of the change here on the average volume, okay,
20%.
that is the 21% of the change I have in the volume on base. Now, how would I be able to figure out that which month has what level of seasonality and what level of change in the trend? So that is the reason it is important that I should not, while I need the both year of data, but when I'm doing a forecast, my year B will be more relevant to my year C, right?
Yes. Recent
And
data.
yeah, the most recent data, that is correct. And that is the reason you would see that when I calculated the change of the rate, see here I have the year-on-year growth, but for this year-on-year growth, I equally distributed that, on month level in order for me to understand that what is going to be the month-on-month average trend of change, right? And then, when I'm further detrending, because this process is only to detrend. So if we think that why this volume is showing completely different, this volume is just an output. It could be anything and I would not really pay attention to that. For me, this is just an output which I need to pass my mathematical formula in order for me to come up to the average monthly volume. So the important one is this,
Okay.
right? But this is the step which is required to get to this important level. So
Okay.
you have to remove the abnormality from your data, and in order for you to remove the abnormality from your data, you have to detrend your volume. And you can this is one of the technique which I have shown, that in a simplest way you can detrend your volume by using the average monthly volume trend.
Yes.
Does that help?
Yes. I thought of doing like, see, the overall year on growth is 18.5. For year C, why don't I do that 18.5% of Jan, 18.5% of Feb, like year B. If I do that, I might arrive at a year C volume by taking the average year growth percentage and multiplying with the year B volume. So I will get the year C.
Yeah, but the challenge in that volume would be that you would lose on the seasonal factor.
Seasonal factor is every month. Does it affects? It might 1 or 2 month.
Because you can see that your seasonal factor from month on month has a difference, right? So you need to be aligned, with your year, because you have a seasonal change, a rate of change also of 16% from year A to year B. Now year B to year C, what is the seasonal change you're gonna get? Let's see that.
And you had shown only the increasing volume to year B. If anything decreased in any month.
If anything decreases in the month, we might have to look for a different technique then.
Okay.
Right. That's the so that is the reason this example is specifically used if you have this set of data.
Okay.
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 So I hope that helps.
Yes, very much. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Anyone else have any question?
Lalit, we have Atul Pathak. He has a question. Hi, Atul. Couple of hands raised, so now we will come to Atul. Atul, go ahead.
Hey, hi, Lalit.
Hi, Atul.
So, yeah, I have gone through your this seasonal trend and all these things, but I just have a few questions, right? If we are overfitting the numbers in from one year to another year, Lalit. Okay. So from one year to another year, do we have any consequences effect or statical effect in the year C, or you can say the year C volume?
Okay. Can you please rephrase your question once again?
Okay. Okay, Lalit. Okay. So see, for Jan we have year A call volume, that is 11,300.
Right.
Right.
113,000. Yes.
Okay. So year B volume is 13,200, 2,000.
132,000.
And definitely the change you have mentioned, if we can calculate over the year growth, that is 18.5, or else we can directly go concluding to 16.81.
That is right.
Okay. So now the factors that is dependable upon the seasonal regarding the seasonality. You have used 11, that is in the terms of this volume. So now what I want to I want to know that once we have derived the here A call volume and here B call volume, and the
Sorry,
change effect.
you are cutting in and out. I think your
think,
voice went too low. Sorry.
hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
I am really sorry, Lalit. My connectivity is very low, I think so.
No,
Are
that's
you
fine.
able to hear me?
This is better. This is better now. This is far better.
Okay. So see, we concluded all the changes regarding 16 to the. I'm not talking about the per month changes. I'm just
Uh-huh.
talking about the year growth. That is
Yearly, yeah. Okay.
18.5.
Right, right.
Okay. So see, my year A call volume and year B call volume.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So is there any dependencies regarding the statical growth, or we can just go with the volumes? See, my statical, that is already dependent upon the p-value, which we derive from the we can say with the R tool or Python tools. Mx plus c, that is my serial equation for the linear equations.
Okay.
Okay.
That's mx
So
plus b.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
mx plus.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay.
So just what I want to know, that is there any statistical growth if
Mhm.
I want to conclude from volume A and from volume B? And regarding the questions of what he told me, that is there any purpose to detrend the call volume?
Is there any purpose of detrending the call volume? Was that the
Correct.
question?
Yeah,
Okay.
the question is that only, but in the form of statistical.
From a statistical standpoint, is there
Yeah,
any way, or is, I mean, is if the question is that, is there any way or a method of identifying or detrending the call volume?
that's correct. That's correct. Yes.
The answer is yes, there is, and we will cover that in the coming, in our coming session. When we would look at the time series, the formula which you just mentioned, that y equals to mx plus b, in order for us to come up to the y of t, which is my new time forecast, right? We take the consideration of my intercept on the slope, right? And I'm talking a little bit statistical, and I hope you will be able to understand.
That's
So
correct. That's correct.
right. So we will go through that stat, and that's a linear trending formula, right? That's a completely linear trending formula we have, which we can, and which would actually give us our R value, which would be very close, and that should be closer to the to one,
Lalit,
right?
Lalit, just what if I'm not able to perform the statical formula as I'm going to trend with my seasonality and going to explain to my clients as a exponentials with unexponentials, because once I
Mm,
overfitted my signal for A call volume. I have just
okay,
overfitted that volume,
right, right.
and what happened uh, in my testing data, in my training data,
Uh-huh.
those call volume are going to give me the result what I want. But once I applied those same equation on my testing data, it is going
Mhm.
to down for my results.
It is going to.
Down, it is going to downgrading my results, interpreting with the volumes.
Okay, see that, and that is the reason I said to you, and I know that I am sure that I understand your question. Uh, Let me show you something. Okay, so while we were talking, I just put up an illustration here for you. Okay, as you can see that this is my whole data for from one data point to my 24 data points which I have put together. Okay, now this is a completely different method I'm talking, and I do not want to confuse it, because when we would talk about the time series, we would talk about it in much more detail. Okay, but here, if I have to look at my intercept, or here I have put together a calculation. If you look at my y volume here, or my p value here, my p value says that I have 9168.8 level of p value. and then further my calculation is coming up to -6. You
R
might,
square,
yes,
definitely.
right. So this might not be fitting, in order for you to fit that into your client level calculation, because if I look at my volume here in a linear trend, that shows a clear trend that my volume from year on year is growing. If it has grown from 18%, year A to year B, and let me just do the year C total here for you. It is showing that I have a further growth of another 20% in the volume, correct? So from a logical standpoint, from a logical standpoint, that it shows a linear trend growth. So then I think, if the question is that whether the client would agree or not, on a logical point, yes, the client should agree, because you have year A versus year B versus year C, your volume is growing on year, and all I am growing the volume is by 1.54% to my next year.
Agreed. Yes.
So, and then my point is just not that, because while you would be only forecasting while this is the complete year volume I am talking about, right? I may not be considering the whole year forecast, because we do not lock the whole year, right?
As per your standpoint, I agree with that. Yes, Lalit.
So what do we lock? We only lock, let's say, 3 months. Okay. So I have generated the forecast for using the 2 year of historical data, and the approach has gone top to down, right? That first I've arrived to my yearly forecast, and I matched my data. Okay. Logically, it says it shows further, better value, that year on year I have a growth of, and I can put this all together so that this would show a clear trend. And here, so year on year I have a growth, right, in the volume. Now since I have a growth in the volume, of course my year C will also be a growing number. That's one. The second thing is, out of this growing number of the year C, what is going to be my first 3 months forecast?
Okay.
Now,
Okay.
in order for us to go to this first 3 months of the forecast, here I'm coming up. Now, this volume should be aligned at least to my first 3 months of the last 2 years. This one and this one, right? Now, in these 2 months, because this month also had some seasonal impact, like January, as we saw that July was the lower month from the January, correct? Which we saw here as a change.
Okay. I agree with that. Yeah.
And then I would further add year 2, which is, and let me call it year 2, which is this one. So you see that year 1 and year 2 are pretty much aligned. So my forecast for year 3, which I will further add, and I can edit this as year 1. So I'm sorry, the year 3 has gone up, but I can bring it down in the data.
I got your point, Lalit. I got your point.
Right. So what I'm trying to say, and I think it's a clear presentation, that year one, while the volume for year one was ranging at, you can put up a data level, and I will remove rest of the data level, but I'll keep the last one. Oh, sorry. So if my year one has ended up at 156, my year two is ending up at somewhere at 100 and what was the volume which it was ending at 182, right? There is no logic which will differ that my year three would not be high unless, and this is the reason we have taken a linear trending volume example, unless there is something which is gonna happen which we already know about. Do you get that point? So look at these three,
I agree with that.
right? Yeah. If I know that yes, my volume, is going to be decreased uh, by certain factor or by certain change, I might, the simply what I'm gonna change is maybe I'm gonna use 3.5, and this is how my volume would actually change, because I know that in the December my growth is going down or my business is going end of life. Maybe it's going right from the October. So in October I will have 3 point, growth 3 to 1, and then the volume is further going down. I can go for that level as well. So does that help?
Lalit,
Sorry, Atul, I couldn't hear you.
hello, hello.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, Lalit. So yeah, this is something very good, and I just from my analyzing point, I just realized whether if you are using some exponentials to
Mm-hmm.
overfit the data and your whatever your line trend is there. So I just agree with your point. Yes, as of now, yes, I do really agree with your forecasting methods, and definitely it is very good session. Thank you so much, Lalit. Yeah,
Thank you, Atul. And you know what?
yeah,
In order for us to fit the line, and I'm
yeah,
getting what you are actually trying to say, that if
yeah, Lalit.
I'm going through, I have multiple options of using the trend line.
Hmm.
So I have a linear trend line, then I have a further polynomial trend line, right? I know
Y-
that I think
Yeah,
that is what you're trying to say. So which one is
correct.
actually most fitting to my data? You know,
Hmm.
we will look at that, and I will come to that point when we will actually look at into in time series in full blown. Because here, if I would just say that okay, your forecast is nothing but the polynomial trend, and then all you need to do is just put a r square calculation on this one, and that should be your forecast. But then maybe rest of our people would not be able to understand that how did that r square is actually representing the data. So
Definitely, Lalit. Yeah,
I would like to go for that again with the same method, where we are leaving today. We will go with again the same method that, okay, let me show you another way of how we can, how we can actually distribute or seclude or differentiate from trend to seasonality to cyclicity. Simple mathematical calculation I'll show, and you'll be amazed, I'm sure about it, that without
yeah.
even looking at the trending side or the charting Excel option, just by
Mhm.
mathematics we will be able to come up with the new forecast numbers, and that forecast we will again compare with our RMSE, MSE, and error rate.
Definitely. Yes, yes, Lalit. I got your point. I got your point, and what variant you are talking about, I just got with my system as well.
No problem, no problem.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, Lalit.
but good. Thank you for asking the question, Atul. It's a good discussion actually, and I like the interactive session, so good. Okay,
Yeah,
do we have more
thank you.
questions?
We have one question from Chakravarti.
Great.
Chakravarti, you may ask question now. I have unmuted you. Chakravarti, I think you are unmuted.
Hey,
We can't hear you. Yes.
hi.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
it can.
Hey,
can.
hi. Hi, Lalit. Thank you for the session. I have learned a lot. So I think maybe a layman's question. So
Sure.
how do we get this power? How do we calculate this power factor or the growth factor? You know, how can we come to a it's 0 or 1? How do we give it?
How do we, okay, right. So this power factor which I have actually applied here, I have applied here keeping in mind this that my most recent historical data is the December ERB, right?
Right.
Then the second historical data after that is my November, right? So what I'm doing actually, if you look at in the power factor formula, right, this growth factor I have applied it in a linear way, that first month I do not want to give much weight. The second month is the weight which I want to give is difference of December to November. Then the October would be difference from December to October, and then so on. So if you look at the formula here, uh, can you see the screen?
Yes, yes.
Okay. If you look at the formula is very simple here, which only says, and I think I can illustrate it in a presidential mode. So it clearly, it simply says that basically your ERB volume, is just need to be multiplied with your change, the average monthly change you have. And then as you go back, till January, because if you're going back till January, you are going 12 months behind from your recent month, right? So it just take that rate of change into multiplication method. So here it is doing 1.5% into 0, where here it does, or maybe in October, what it does is this one multiplied by 1.54 multiplied by 1.54 again. That's how it actually is doing. I mean, and then there is another thing which I'm further adding. So this is how this formula is actually working for the power in order for us to provide the growth. So it's this power is only to calculate or only to uplift my volume with the average monthly trend. In a layman term, if I will say that my January volume, okay, it has a change of 1.54%, right?
Right.
Month on month.
Right.
So from January to July, what will be the total change? It will be 1.54% times 7 from January.
Correct.
That is what I have done it.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're
Got it.
welcome. Okay. We have more questions?
Thanks, Chakravarti. We have answered a couple of them. Just trying to see if there are any hands raised here.
Okay.
Hi Lalit, I have one question.
Sure, sir. Go ahead. May I know your name?
Darshan.
Oh,
Previously I
Darshan.
was
Okay.
talking.
Yeah, go ahead, Darshan. Sorry.
Yeah, my simple question is, if I'm forecasting for a new team, it's a new client for us.
New client. Okay.
For example, it's a new client. We don't know the call volume. We don't know the trend, anything.
Right.
You told that comparing with the other industry, same industry.
Correct.
We can forecast.
Yes, that is one idea.
But we can't expect it as a right. Yeah, because when you, for example, if I'm an Airtel user and a Vodafone user, if I'm doing it for Airtel,
okay.
See, Airtel users might be more compared to Vodafone. So I can't do the call volume based on the Vodafone users, right?
You can. You can. Let me tell you this how. Okay. So you need to know two things. One is you need to know the user base of Vodafone. So let's say for example, the user base of Vodafone is 1000. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Now 1000 user base is generating, let's say, 10,000 or maybe 20,000 call volume.
Okay.
Okay. So what is the rate of the change, or what is the customer to contact ratio?
1%.
I will go different other way around.
No.
It's, did I make it?
Is it
correct?
20,000 or 2 lakh? Is it 20,000 or 2 lakh?
Yeah, let's make it for an example. I mean 200 calls. Okay. So what I am saying that I am getting 20% of my call volume in the call center.
Yes.
Right? What is
Yes.
this? This is a customer to contact ratio.
Yes.
Right? Every 1000
Yes.
customer is giving me a 20% call volume. Now all you need to know is what? Airtel consumer base. It could be 5,000. Okay. Since I don't have any
Yes.
other data, I am just believing that Mr. Vodafone, if Mr. Vodafone is generating 20% call volume, or their contact ratio is 20%, so then I will use the same number here and I will come up with
Must
the
be a
forecasted call volume.
1,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? Now you can have other factor. The factor is my services are better, and I have seen that the walk-ins which are there on Vodafone, in order for DISR, okay, I'm talking about telecom now, which is disconnection in subscriber request due to the network
Yes.
problem. Okay, that could be even 5%. That will be 5% lower for me. Okay. So you need to understand, or you need to come up that how many DISR they have per month versus, or per year versus how many I have, and out of them how many are from the network, and with that network what is the impact of the call volume. Maybe that impact is 50 calls, 100 calls, or 500 calls, or 5 lakh calls, whatever it is. I'm just going to
Okay.
either add or subtract that from my overall customer to contact ratio.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yes. Yes. But what if I don't compare with any other, like I'm a new one? So without
Okay.
comparing with other industry, how can I forecast?
Very new, like super new. There is no telecom organization or any. I mean, it's
No,
like a
I'm
startup,
starting
a
it.
new idea.
Yes.
I mean, should we go for like it's a new startup?
Yeah, for a new startup, I need to do the forecast volume. So based on that, I can do the headcount calculations further.
Head.
I can hire the people based on this forecast.
Okay, fine. If you are the newest industry, okay, let's say you are a newest industry of augmented reality. Okay, newest. Nobody knows about your industry, and this industry has never even been launched. Okay, and now you have to do the forecast. Okay.
Yes.
That forecast will be solely based on your budgeting,
Okay.
right? Because you don't
Budgeting.
have anything, correct? Like
Yes. Yes.
I'll tell you, yesterday one of my friend was telling me to open a pharmaceutical company, right? So when he gave me the option that this is the pharmaceutical company which we are gonna open, so I asked him the first question: what is the yearly turnover you are anticipating? So he said the turnover which I'm anticipating is 10 crore. Okay.
Okay.
So I did a reverse math from there, that okay, if the 10 crore is going to be your turnover, okay, which includes your overall revenue, I am going to calculate what is the level of expenses, backtrack we can do, how much out of those expenses we need to have we need to put on customer relationship and so on. So if you don't have it, then you have to come up with the budgeting, and that budgeting would be some sort of, I'm sure it would come with the overall planning of how much business, how much money you're putting in the business and all that stuff. If it's a completely fairly new, but honestly, if you ask me today, there is nothing which is fairly new. There are always some reference points which we can take it from the businesses. Either we go for a focus group discussion, or we go for a survey polling, or we look at a reference data from other competitor or other player in the industry.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
Okay.
And I used to do that when I was in IBM. We used to have some RFPs, and solutioning team used to look at the businesses, used to look at the other industries, other players from the same industry. We used to do the same thing.
Okay.
Okay. Does that
And
help?
one more thing, the weighted, yeah, and yes, that very much helpful. And weighted average, you are given a particular weight. It is all about the individual, right? How individual giving the weighted average. Is there any particular value protocol for giving a weighted average?
See, there is
Percentage.
a particular weight, and if you look at, I have not given here a free weight. I have given here a weight basis on my average monthly trend, right? And then
Okay.
I have gone into the random, I've gone into a specific order that what is my latest month? My latest month is December year B, right?
Yes.
So should I, if I will give a more weight to this number, that most of my forecast should come from here, right? Then that will give me the correct forecast. Do you agree?
May not know. When I'm doing for a January forecast, I can't take it for a recent December. I can take it the last year Jan data.
That is right. But that is the reason, that is the reason, if you would look at when I'm detrending it, exactly the same volume you are getting it, for 182 to 182, right?
Yes.
But when I'm going for January in the year C, you see that volume is being it's matching. It's not going to 183. It's going to 156, because what I'm actually was missing here when I was going to 156 also, as you can see, is that I have to come up first to my base volume. And on the base volume, the seasonal factor is only 95%. So which means it's a 5% lower volume in the month of January, which is gonna be offered to the contact center from my base volume.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I request, again, that to practice it a little bit, because this would only get clear. Trust me. I mean, when I studied it first time, it didn't get clear to me also.
Yes, it's a bit confusing, but we need to practice it.
This requires a practice. Yes, this requires also a little bit of study on statistics, and I'm sure then we will be able to, help each other more, because this is just a basic session. And when we will go into the deep, and we would cover in the coming session the single exponent, the
When
trend.
we do it on hands-on
Yes,
by
we will
us,
do it
by
hands-on.
ourselves,
Yes,
then we'll get to know.
sure. If you need anyone, I can share this table, so you guys can even calculate that. That's not a problem. We can do that.
Do we get this
Okay.
PPT?
PPT I would not be able to share, but I think PPT is something that we would be. I think Shiva would be further able to help that how we can share the material. We have some ideas about it on the GWFM, but we will be able to share some material, but not exactly the same PPT. But yes, you will get some material as well. We have some programs for that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Lalit.
You're welcome, Darshan. You're welcome. Okay. Any other question we have?
Lalit, I think so. Like we're done with the questions. There are some of them have written. What we'll do is I'll just share all of them.
Okay.
We can revert. Now it's 11 p.m. now here. What we'll do is we will stop here. And probably like we will continue continue further, and want to thank you for all the effort that you have taken and taken your time out. Before you leave, just let me take the control, and I'll just before our friends leave, I'll just share some of the things that what we do.
Okay.
1 minute.
Sure. I just want to let every one of you know that if you have any question, you have two ways to go. One is, of course, our GWFM platform. Another one, if anybody want to reach out to me directly, you can write your questions to me on lalitchouhan.com as well. So that's where I would be able to help out. You can connect with me through GWFM. I am part of the core committee member for GWFM, so you can connect with us at any time on all of our social media platforms. And I'm sure we would be able to help you out. The idea is to grow this community and to ensure that we all have the same level of knowledge.
That's right, you know.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Sure,
Lalit.
you can. Yep.
Friends, before you leave, just take your minute. I want to share that what we do. What we do is we're a chartered body with 20,000 WFM professionals across the world. We are the first one to dedicate WFM Professionals Day as on 27th of June. and we are the first one to introduce a graduate program in WFM, and then we have come out of with certification program, executive program, PGP program, and senior leadership program as well. So very comprehensive program, you know, which we have designed in fishbone model. And you can visit our website, and I encourage all of you to join in our social media to get to know more about it. And we are building community, and we want all of you to join in, and encourage your colleagues and friends to join in. We're a non-profit organization, so we want to help and create strong WFM professionals networking platform and knowledge sharing. These two are the vision of GWFM. Good to have Lalit is part of our core team, and we have advisory team, and we have got a couple of people who are working with us very closely to get this going worldwide. And want to share that. So these are the courses which we are offering as part of the CPD. Skilling, we have initiated a new initiative called GWFM, Skill WFM and Upskill WFM. We are going to have all the topics right from capacity planning, forecasting, and workforce analytics, people analytics, design thinking, WFM tools. We're going to talk about all the tools, and then the real time and scheduling, staffing, and shrinkage, and revenue optimization, and cost optimization, and many more areas, you know, which we're going to have it. So which talks about we have a strong platform and very good LMS to learn, and we're going to build world-class business cases and templates for all that, and want to share some of other things that anyone would join WFM as a member. We can definitely grow as a professional member, and also you can take up fellowship program with us, and I'll have this shared with you sometime. Also, you can go up to Elite Fellowship. So these are all the programs, you know, which I would talk about it a little later. This is a career journey that, you know, you want to create for all the WFM professionals, right from the foundation level to the competent level and expert level, advanced level, and thought leadership level. So this is what we want to help out, growing and building multiple skills for ourselves. And lastly, I want to talk about a membership which I have introduced recently, where so far we have been non-profit professional body, but this year onwards, we thought of we'll have the membership, which is a paid membership to take care of our operation cost. We thought that we'll do that. We have a silver membership, gold membership, diamond, and the platinum. Silver membership is a free membership. All that you would get is regular e-newsletter, and then the email tips for the week. Whereas gold membership is an individual, which would cost $290. And whoever joins in the course, the membership for the gold is absolutely free, you know, is given to them for the first year, and they will get all these facilities with us, and they'll be able to avail all these facilities with us. And also, like, we have diamond membership, which is for the site, where people more than up to 3 can avail this. And then platinum membership is something that, you know, is for the corporate, where you know, unlimited members can be, you know, avail this. So I'll have this shared with you. Join us in our social media to get to know more about it, and let's collaborate. Let's learn something new in WFM. Let's skill WFM and let's upskill WFM. In fact,
That's right.
GWFM is registered in US and Canada and also in India. We are the lonely awarding body in the world as far as WFM products and best practices is concerned. Only GWFM has got the awarding capability with thought leaders who have been there in jury and also as far as judging capacity. So with this, I thank Lalit for your time and also all the friends that you have joined. Thank you so much for your presence. We will answer all your questions. We'll write you and also we'll connect with you offline to answer all
Yes.
your questions. We have collected all your data. We will get back. And if you need any further session, then we'll come back to you on this. If you want to have a particular course that if you want to take up in forecasting itself to become an expert in forecasting. So we have the program, which is certification in forecasting. Probably, like I'll share you the details about the duration of the course and then content of the course and the fees for this. And when is that we do? All that details that it will share it with you. And we will catch up with this. Thank you so much for all of you who have joined. We'll get connected. Join us on our social media. Let's catch up. Feel free to reach me out and Lalit anytime. Whenever you have any questions, we're happy to answer all your questions.
Yep.
Okay. Wonderful.
Hey.
Lalit, you have anything to say?
No, I think you covered most of it. The only thing which I would like to say and just reiterate that we do provide, exclusive consulting services also. So in case if any of you have any business related challenge or, any problem in terms of the innovative solution which you are looking for or setting up a processes or the governance or the, WFM standards, feel free to reach out to us. We will help you out. As Shiba mentioned that, this is a community which we have to grow big and we have to help each other. So we are looking forward to connect with you, at an individual level, at a group level, at an organization level, at a corporate level. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lalit. Thanks a lot for all of you joining and taking your time out in the weekend. Thank you so much.